Hello, Cubs fans. Welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce on the greatest solo mission ever, and that is the eve of the MLB Trade Deadline. We've already got comments. Sean Gardner here saying this better not be their only move, and we're going to get into that here in just a second. But first, welcome to Cubs on Tap. It is a beautiful evening to be talking about baseball. Despite the Cubs losing the series against the Yankees, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Cardinals. But of course, we have to get to the biggest news. And I will get to that here in just a second. But I also want to remind you guys that Joe Johnson came through in the clutch. Also, a belated shout out, happy birthday to our good friend Joe over at Obvious Shirts, because he made tank tops. And I promised him I'd wear them. And I still love this PCA crossing the Delaware tank top. I don't care if it's not the 4th of July. I'm still going to wear it because we're talking about some trade fireworks here tonight. So I'm always going to encourage everybody. You see that little code up in the top corner of the screen. Go there. It'll take you right to the Obvious Shirts website. Use On Tap Sports at checkout, and you will save 10% on your purchase. Shout out to our friends over at Obvious Shirts. Jed fleeced the Blue Drakes, says Praz Master. So let's just get into it. Let's not even waste any time. The Chicago Cubs, first off, they did me a favor. I knew if we didn't go live at 8, the Cubs would make a trade. And son of a bitch, they came through in the clutch for Ron Luce. Kevin Gausman is a Chicago Cub. And I'll tell you what, big shout out to our friend Tyler Edmonds. He's currently in the skies on his way back home to Kentucky. He was actually in the beautiful city of Chicago for the last handful of days. He wrote one of the few people I think clamoring for like the Kevin Gausman acquisition makes so much sense for the Cubs because of the pedigree in the playoffs, because of the incredible career. He's got the swing and miss stuff, which is something that the Cubs have sorely needed and sorely missed. Shout out Tyler for calling this one. In the trade, it is a pair of prospects going back to the Toronto Blue Jays. Ironically, the Cubs and Blue Jays have already made 2 trades before this deadline. I think a lot of people have already forgotten about the Jameson Taillon deal, but we'll talk about that here in just a minute. It is Ty Southacene. Southacene is a middle infielder for the Cubs. He was a 2025 draft pick. I believe he was their 4th round draft pick in 2025. Really good bat to ball skills. Doesn't really offer a lot of power. Really good defensive player as well. And then Brett Bateman. He's been around the system a little bit longer. Outfielder. Also has great bat to ball skills. Probably profiles more as like a swing outfielder at the highest level, as the great Greg Huss said over on X. So this is the number 13 and number 21 prospects, according to MLB Pipeline, going to the Toronto Blue Jays. And I'll tell you what, this is a great pickup. I completely agree, Curtis. This is a great pickup. And I know his numbers don't look good on paper, and I know he's had a little bit of a rough year. But Kevin Gausman is the type of pitcher the Cubs, A, don't have because of the swing and miss stuff, like we've already mentioned. And B, this is a guy that's pitched a ton of playoff baseball. He was a part of that rotation that helped this Blue Jays team just a year ago get to within, you could argue, a play of winning the World Series. He's been incredible over his career. He's been a great starting pitcher for a long time. And despite the ERA troubles this year, I think the Cubs are happy getting what they're going to get from Gausman. You know, he's going to bring those strikeout numbers. And when you get to the postseason, and I highly encourage everybody to go check out Tyler's article over at ontapsportsnet.com. Go to that little search bar, search Kevin Gausman. It's going to be the first thing that comes up until the trade article gets up there this evening. Read it, because I think every point that Tyler hit on was perfect. It was that big strikeout and how that can swing an inning in the playoffs and potentially dictate the game when it's all said and done. Just a guy that's knows what he's getting into when you get into the postseason. I firmly believe that Kevin Gausman was the right pickup for the Cubs, or at least one of the right pickups. And going back to Sean's comment a little earlier, he's saying this better not be their only move. And Michael, I completely agree. Gausman is a really nice 3 or 4, I think, on this team. I don't think the Cubs are done. I don't think they can be. Like, let's just completely be honest here. I don't think it can be. And I'll tell you what, read something incredibly encouraging a little while ago here. These were, again, per all of the reports that we've heard from PJ Mooney talking about what the Cubs are interested in. The Cubs are interested in a lot of controllable arms, right? We've heard that. We've heard about Reed Detmers, Jose Soriano, George Kirby, Emerson Hancock. And then they also mentioned all the rental starters that they could be looking at. Gausman was named, Clay Holmes, Brady Singer are some of those names. There's also a report out there, which you can read over at ontapsportsnet.com, that the Cubs want 3 pitchers at this deadline, which to me screams a reliever, at least one, a starter, at least one, and then one of the other 2. Bare minimum is what they're looking for to come out of this deadline with. And if that's the case, if that is truly the case, then this is just the first domino to fall. I expect Jed to be working all night. I'm sure he's going to, when he speaks to the media tomorrow after the deadline comes and goes, he's probably going to have bags under his eyes. He's probably going to be drinking, cheap pots of coffee in the Cubs offices overnight. They're going to be working the phones. And I firmly believe guys like Luke Weaver might still be on the docket, even though obviously Freddie Peralta is gone and now in Tampa. I still foresee, them probably barking up the wall of either the Mariners or the Angels for one of those controllable arms as well. I think they would love to come away with a controllable arm, especially when you look at what the future of the Cubs rotation looks like beyond this season. Obviously, they need these guys to come in and help them compete right now. Tarek Skubal's a Dodger. We all know what that means for baseball. They look like the World Series favorites. The Cubs are still going to give it everything they've got to try and go out there and win this thing. And I firmly believe that one of those 4 names can not only be acquired, but would be a huge piece to pair with Justin Steele and Cade Horton in the future when those guys get healthy. Because beyond that, who's really going to be in this rotation after this season? Gausman's a free agent after this year. Obviously, as we mentioned, he's a rental. You're also going to have, when it's all said and done here, Shota becoming a free agent. They moved on from Jameson Taillon, who was going to be a free agent. Matthew Boyd is technically going to be a free agent. There's a mutual option that can be picked up on both sides, but there's no guarantee that they pick that up. There aren't a lot of guarantees right now. Colin Ray, you know what I mean? That's kind of where this rotation stands. And I think that's why they still want to go out there and get that controllable arm. But they were happy to take, a Kevin Gausman in, because now you could throw him in your starting 5. You go get another guy and you can still, throw him in your starting 5. Right? Especially if one of these guys that's currently thrown in the rotation needs a day off or they want to go rest. Maybe Colin Ray moves to the bullpen, even though he's been splendid. It's so hard to poo on Colin Ray right now, just because the guy gives them everything they need. He threw a quality start today, but gets the loss because the bats couldn't show up against Garrett Cole. It's been something, man. It has been something. Curtis said this a little bit earlier, so this is a good transition for me just to quickly talk about the Jameson Taillon trade. He says he needs a Gausman versus JMO matchup on Thursday. So in case you didn't remember, Cubs fans, because of the schedule and the rain out way back in June, that game is being made up this coming Thursday between the Dodgers series and the Cubs going to Kansas City next weekend. It's a 1:20 start on Thursday at Wrigley. This could be possible. Now, granted, I think it's more likely we see Gausman at some point in the Dodgers series. I kind of hope it's Wednesday, selfishly, because I'm going to the game on Wednesday, and I would love to see Gausman throw in a Cubs uniform. But I really think, the Cubs did right by Jameson Taillon. I think it's really cool that he, as a Canadian, gets to go play for Canada's team, and they're in a down year and they're selling and they're not going to be contenders this year. But before you hit free agency and potentially turn into a bit of a journeyman for however long he wants to try to continue pitching in the majors, you get to at least pitch a half a season with your home country team. And that's got to be really cool for Jameson Taillon. And I'll tell you what, I've always respected the Cubs and how they treat these good vets when they need to get rid of them. They give them grace. They give them, the best opportunity that they can, and land them in a good situation. And I think they did that by Jameson Taillon. The Blue Jays are going to need an arm. Kevin Gausman's out the door, the same day that the Cubs moved Taillon up to Toronto. So he's going to throw innings for them. He's going to, be a piece on their roster for the rest of the season. And again, as a Canadian, that's got to be some really cool pride for Jameson Taillon to be able to pitch for Canada's team in the Toronto Blue Jays. So we love to see that. And I'll tell you what, this is also interesting from Sean here, and he's got a great point. He was talking about wondering why Hartshorn was removed from the game on Sunday. And he says that they should go get Jose Soriano. Jose Soriano is a great option. Personally, I think Emerson Hancock would be the name that I would want, either him or George Kirby. But if the price is just egregious and the Cubs, and let me put a bookmark in that thought for a second, I'll come back to it. But I do think, there's going to be a lot to be said here with how they approach this. I think they want Hartshorn to be healthy just in case they need to make the big move and they're willing to part with him, depending on who the player is. Ultimately, at the end of the day, though, I don't think they move Hartshorn. I think he's the only prospect they have right now in the system that genuinely moves the needle. And unless you're getting the guy, you're probably not, unfortunately, going to move on from him. And if you're the Cubs, I think you certainly want to keep him if you certainly can. But we'll have to wait and see. Black Mamba here in the comments section saying Scuba was quoted as saying the Dodgers were his only option, the only team he wanted to go to. Well, of course, I that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, go be part of the huge thing, right? Go be a part of the super team that's out there. I think we'll have to wait and see that happen. Of course, Michael Thomas saying here, 50 games left, wild card on American could be a surprise. Yeah, in relation to the Toronto stuff, absolutely. I think they're certainly not out of it. And I think Toronto's smart, though, being able to flip, expiring assets to, on a little bit of a down year, maybe they do sneak in and they still have a chance, but they're trying to recoup value on what's out there right now. Sean asks here, could Hartshorn be traded for someone like Mason Miller or Luke Weaver? Luke Weaver, I don't think they would trade Hartshorn for, even though he does have another year of control. But my guess would be it would have to be a Mason Miller leverage trade. I think that's the only way they part with him. Now that Scooble's off the board, to me, that's the only way that the Cubs part with Hartshorn when it's all said and done. And then Taylor Clark says here, would love to keep Hartshorn, make Rojas the centerpiece of a big starter. Yeah, I think there's a good possibility that Jefferson Rojas would be. Everybody's looking for good shortstops, and Rojas has played also a little bit of third now. He's a guy that can move around the infield a little bit. And he's a really good ball player. If you've been listening to this show for a long time, you've probably heard Juice absolutely just love on Jefferson Rojas when he got to see him in low A at South Bend and how good he's been. A good friend of the program here, Mr. Mark Yano, says Gausman is out of gas. He's a bust. Bad move. I don't think he's out of gas, though. His fastball run value is in the 96th percentile in all of baseball. I mean, this guy still gets it. His average is still 94. Even though he's 35 years old, he's still throwing gas. And because he's a fastball splitter guy, he doesn't really throw the slider much. He only throws it about 10% of the time. He really relies on that four seam with that split. The four seam's been great. 86th percentile in chase percentage, 77th percentile in walk percentage. He doesn't walk guys, which is fantastic. The Cubs don't want extra base runners. He kind of fits their profile, except for he's not a big ground ball pitcher. And sometimes he's going to get hit a little hard, but I think he still has the stuff. And let's be honest, I think the Cubs love guys that have the split. We've seen Shota kind of reinvent himself, as that player again, because the splitter's working. I think that's some of what they see in Gausman and are kind of hoping he will be the case when it's all said and done. Will the Cubs get a reliever before the deadline? Yes, I absolutely think they do. I think they have to. I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about it. Right now, they've got guys that can bridge you to the ninth inning. I think Ryan Rollison's been such a fun story. He's been incredible, 2.4 ERA this year. Of course, I mean, how about Jacob Webb being the guy out of all the guys they signed in the offseason to kind of be the damage control guy? You're going to have Hobie Milner coming back soon. He's pitching innings down in Iowa as he rehabs and gets back. But they still need that closer. They don't have anybody that, unless it's once Palencia is healthy, that I feel comfortable can come into the game and be nails when they need them to. I think getting Savali back was a very small, but I think important move because they were able to kind of unlock Savali last year and get a lot of value out of him, especially to just get you to the playoffs and keep arms fresh. I really think that they look at this deadline, they go, we have to get another guy because we don't know what Danny P is going to fully be when he comes back from injury. We need at least one guy that we can throw in there late in the game and you know be confident can be the guy to close out games when it's all said and done. Black Mamba says here, he says, I'll be surprised if the Cubs get another starter. He thinks they'll go after a couple of big relief pitchers. Could be. I also think there's a world where they could go after another starter because, and my reasoning for it, I'm not saying that Black Mamba's wrong here. I think this is a great point. I think they want probably more relievers than starters. I think now that they got Gausman, they might be like, okay, hey, if we can find another starter, great. There's been some rumblings that Casey Mize is really high on the Cubs list of names. Obviously, the 4 that we've already mentioned that are out west. There's some names in there that they certainly could target. But I think, we'll have to wait and see. But I think, and Jay asked, will they trade for another starting pitcher? I'm going to kind of answer that question here with Black Mamba's comment. I think there's certainly a possibility they still trade for another starter. And the reason I say that is because I look at how this could shape up in the playoffs. Gausman is certainly a starter that I would be comfortable throwing in the playoffs. Shota's going to throw in the playoffs as well, assuming the wheels don't fall off here in the last 2 months. But Ben Brown isn't back yet. He's probably not going to be stretched out as a starter, so they'll bring him probably out of the pen. And he came out of the pen early in the season and was dynamic and good. It's something he's done already this year. I think Justin Steele, if we see him at all pitch, it's going to be out of the bullpen because he's not going to have enough time to stretch out and be a starter. You're going to have Danny P. You're going to have Webb. You might have Milner because he's a lefty. I think, and that's exactly what I'm saying here, Mamba. And that's why, though, I think they could go for another starter because all those guys are probably going to be pen pieces in the playoff. If you get another starter, whether that's, to throw instead of Peterson, whether that's to throw instead of, it's not going to be instead of Boyd. Boyd will be in your playoff rotation. But if you don't feel comfortable with Peterson as your 4th guy, you can go out and get that guy. And then you've got Peterson and Ray, who can also be, those guys that can kind of be on the roster for one series and then be off the roster for the next because they can come out of the pen and give you length. And maybe Peterson's not the guy so much that gives you the length, as a bullpen arm, but maybe it's a guy like Colin Ray because he's done it in his career and he knows how to kind of be that pitcher where he can come out of the bullpen in the playoffs and give you 2 or 3 innings. I think that's incredibly important as well. So that's why I say I don't think they're done per se with starters. I think they absolutely could just take care of business and do that. And we'll have to wait and see. Now, Black Mamba says here, they could use Brown and Steele as openers. They could, but then you have to rely on a guy that feels comfortable coming out of the bullpen to throw multiple innings, right? I would rather just let guys throw and let these guys come out late and be sick, right? Because if Justin Steele can go out there and give it 100% on every throw because he's only going to throw an inning, that's awesome. That's going to be great for you in the playoffs. Ben Brown, same thing. If he's going to give you 2 innings, great. That's fine. I also think they want guys that can give you the length, right? We know Boyd and Shota can give you 6. We know that Peterson at times can give you that. Gausman's going to give you that. Maybe they want that 5th guy that can do that. Colin Ray certainly can do that too. I think we've seen it with the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are a perfect example. They have arguably 10 starting pitchers on their roster. But when they get into the playoffs, you can use those guys in so many different ways that you essentially can build your playoff bullpen or pitching staff. That's the term I'm looking for. You can build your playoff pitching staff just based on the 12 or 13 best arms that you have. And I think that's why that becomes so important. That's why I think I wouldn't rule them out from going after another starter, especially if he's controllable, because so many of those guys we just named very easily could not be in this organization come 2027. I think most of them won't be. I don't think Shota will be back. Gausman, I don't think resigns just because where he's at in his career. I don't really think they're going to pick up Boyd's option because I think it's for $16 million or $18 million or something like that. I don't think they're going to do that. Maybe they re-sign Boyd on a 1-year deal at something a little lower, or maybe they do pick up his option. But even then, right? How ready is Steele to be a starter again? Is Brown going to be able to start? Where's Cade Horton at? If you have another controllable guy, you at least can pencil somebody in there. Because again, we saw it this year. How many freaking injuries happened to this team? So I think that's where they're kind of looking right now. And I think it comes down to where they can make a deal. And Mr. Mark says here, GM Ron, the Cubs are making a big trade with the Angels. Book it. Maybe they are making a big trade with the Angels. And this is why I think we might see another trade. And it's going to piss me off because we're here live talking about it. And then we're going to sign off and something's going to happen. But I don't want to be surprised if there's a late night deal tonight because all those teams are on the West Coast and they're still kind of finishing up some of their games. So I really wouldn't be shocked if the Cubs try to swing a deal with the Mariners or the Angels because those are controllable arms that they would be acquiring. And I think that's something that Jed Hoyer really wants to go get when it's all said and done. Now, a lot is saying here, go get Mason Miller deep in the bullpen. They need somebody that's lights out at the end of the game. That'd be freaking awesome to see. Jay says something big has to be coming. One of their best prospects was pulled today, right? Yep, that's Hartshorn. We were talking a little bit about that. I wouldn't say it's guaranteed that he's gone, but maybe there's a deal that the Cubs kind of like, and they're like, oh, okay, we'll think about it. And that's why they were ultimately willing to pull him. And then Alcantara for Weaver, not enough. No, I don't think that's enough. Not for a guy that's got I don't know what his numbers are now, but last time I checked, he had a 1.93 ERA, and he's under contract for 2027. I don't think a guy that's graduated from a prospect list and can't crack your everyday lineup is going to be enough. I think you could include Alcantara for sure. I mean, he'd get great opportunity in New York to probably play a lot, but you'd probably be looking at least 2 other prospects going back for a guy like Weaver, just because of that control. If he was a rental, I think you could get away with Alcantara and maybe one other piece, but I think it's going to take at least 2 when it's all said and done. Alop says here as well, he says, feels like Gausman's numbers are misleading. He feels like another Peterson type. Just need to change the scenery with an elite defense. I agree completely. Now, granted, I think these two are a little different a lot, just from the standpoint of Peterson is a heavy ground ball rate guy, and the Mets are just so bad defensively that's why he got really banged up. We're seeing now that when you put a Gold Glove infield behind him, what happens when the team actually plays defense? Whereas with Gausman, like his ground ball rate's only in I think the high 30s. He's in the 43rd percentile in all baseball. For comparison, I think Peterson's in the 80 something percentile in all baseball for ground ball rate. So, but I agree in the sense of a change of scenery. Wrigley, when it gets cooler, is a pitcher's ballpark. Playing in a dome in Toronto, or when the weather's nice in Toronto and the ball flies. It'll be something to keep an eye on and watch there. We got another trade here. Tyler Molly to the Braves. And I'm not surprised that the Braves are active right now. They certainly want to go out there and get an arm. Anthony Molina is the piece going the other way. That's pretty much just a depth piece is what that feels like right now for the Braves. I think we're going to start to see the action picking up here tonight. I really do. I think everybody wanted to get through gameplay today. And then because Monday, most games start later in the day after the deadline, it's going to be a frenzy now for the next, quick math here. What is that, 20 hours or so, 21 hours? We're going to see a lot of movement. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I fully expect the Cubs to be active. And I think they're going to do something here before this is all said and done. Now, Sean asks, will the Cubs add another starter and a reliever? I think they will. I think they'll add both. They said they wanted 3 pitchers. That was the report. Anthony Molina, the owner of the Browns on draft day. Yeah, I thought the same thing when I heard that name. I think they have to. I think they do get another starter, and I think they do get another reliever. And I think they might get 2 relievers. I think if they, can find a lower level reliever, a guy who maybe does something really well that they like, whether it's kind of that fastball sweeper combination that we've seen the Cubs fall in love with from their bullpen arms over the years, a guy who doesn't cost much and the team's just looking to dump for an asset. I could see a world where the Cubs add 2 relievers and still add another starter. I think they're going to be busy, and it's all going to happen in the next 20 hours. And I think they were just waiting to get through this Yankee series before they really started to wheel and deal. So that way they knew what they could wheel and deal after gameplay resumed. And then, mind you, as a lot of people don't probably know off the top of their heads, but minor league baseball really doesn't play on Mondays. That's their off day. That's their travel day usually. So it's a great day to have the trade deadline because all your prospect assets are not in action and all your games start late. So that's why I think we'll start to really see everything start to happen now, even overnight. There's a world where if you got to get up early for work tomorrow and you put your phone away at 10 o'clock tonight, you might wake up to a few trades because I'm sure things will start to happen late into the evening. Jay said here, Jose Soriano or Reed Detmers to the Cubs or Emerson Hancock. He says any one of those three is who they should go get. Like I said, I think Hancock would be the best. He's been incredible this year for the Mariners. He's super young. It's going to be something to see there. Big Beef says here the Cubs need another bat. I think there's a world where they could go out and get that bat. I also think this is why we won't see Pedro Ramirez get traded because I think they like him coming off the bench. I think they like Conforto being there for the playoffs. And I also think they'll like that with having Matt Shaw there too, because then you have two guys that can play both in and outfield. And having that kind of versatility on, coming off your bench with guys who are also decent pitch hitters, I think is something that the Cubs want. And hey, we saw it last year, right? We've seen it in years past where the Cubs make a small deal to go get another bench bat. I think there's a world where they could still certainly do that. I think it really just depends how everything falls with the pitchers. Sean says here they should get someone to replace Conforto. I mean, Conforto's been good though. He's got like an 810 OPS. I know it's not, he isn't lighting the world on fire, but as a fourth outfielder, I think he's been a really good addition for the Cubs so far. The Lop says here, he says he feels bad for all these prospects. They're probably on edge, not knowing their futures right now. They could be on the move soon. Oh, the anxiety for sure. I'm sure that's something a lot of these guys think about. And, but that's why you hear so many of them talk. It's just like, hey, it's out of my control. Like, I'm just going to play baseball and do my thing. And if I get moved, I get moved. Look at Zaire Hope, right? Gets moved from the Cubs organization to the Dodgers, and the Dodgers flipped them to the Tigers in the Skubal deal. So it'll be something to watch over the next couple hours, man. I know we were gonna talk a little Yankees and Cardinals series, and we certainly still should. Hell yeah, fuck the Cardinals. That should have been a sweep. Love that it was at least a 3 out of 4. PCA with some awesome moments in that series as well. Overall, some really good pitching in that series too, which is what we like to see. Peterson was great in that series. I really liked that as well. And then I'll tell you what, in this Yankee series, I know a lot of people, some people are down and out because the Cubs can't hit well against good pitching. I mean, Max Fried's one of the best in the game. Garrett Cole's one of the best in the game. And your starters were good in this series. The Cubs only gave up, 2 runs today, 2 runs on Friday, and 2 runs on Saturday. You gave up 6 total runs to the New York Yankees, and you lost 2 out of 3 just because the bats didn't take advantage of opportunities. Nico Horner, with the bases loaded, that one hurts, especially not challenging what should have been ball 4 and would have walked in a run and tied the game. Instead, takes the strike and then he, flies out on the next pitch. And, it sucks, but it's a great, stepping stone. It's a great kind of pedestal of where's this Cubs team right now. And it came at a great time. It's right before the deadline. Okay, well, shit, we didn't hit, but maybe that shows why Carson Kelly's a little bit more important to this team than people realize. Wasn't in the lineup on Sunday. You needed, Seiya wasn't in the lineup on Friday. Could have used Seiya's bat in a game that, they ultimately lose. So, I think the last week of baseball, there was a lot of good, some bad, but I think they're gonna figure some stuff out. They're gonna have to. They don't have a choice when it's all said and done here. And obviously, the trade deadline is going to play a huge piece in that, in allowing them to continue to upgrade this team and make this team a whole lot better. JS, how many trades do you think the Cubs make tomorrow? I'll say how many trades the Cubs make between now and tomorrow. I think it's going to be 3. I think it's going to be 3, and 2 of them are going to be small. I think there's one big trade coming. And by big, I mean multiple pieces being moved. I don't know the caliber of player they're going to go get. Like, no offense to like Reed Detmers, but like the Reed Detmers trade doesn't like move my soul. But that being said, it's going to cost multiple pieces, and there's going to be a lot of movement in that deal. And if that ends up being the case, that's a big trade, in my opinion. And then, like I said, I really do think they go make two little trades. I think they go get another bench bat if they can find somebody that they really like, and I think they go get another kind of under the radar reliever. A guy who's probably an expiring contract. The team is just looking to get any kind of asset for the player. Can they move them and get what they want out of it? I kind of think that's where they're leaning right now when it's all said and done. But the Gausman trade's a great start. It really is. I think it's a great start to the whole thing. You're good. You didn't really part with anything that's going to be earth shattering. Like, no offense to Ty Salthacine or Bateman, but neither one of these guys are probably going to be playing with the team anytime soon. Bateman, there's just so many outfielders now in the Cubs system between guys like Conrad and Sorrell, and of course Hartshorn, and all these names that are outfielders as well, that are all going to be competing for those corner outfield spots in future years, depending on what happens to the futures of Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki. Nobody's supplanting PCA in center field, of course, anytime soon. And then you look at South of scene. Nico Horner's locked in. Dansby Swanson's locked in. Middle infielders probably aren't really coming up much anytime soon and going to actually play every day, right? I know everybody's high on Jefferson Rojas, but where's he going to play? Alex Bregman's locked in too. He's not going to learn first base. Michael Busch has years of control still. So I think they make 3 deals. And I think they made a great deal to start today, with Gausman. 2 pieces that are admittedly were on like the lower side of like, okay, you move those, that's fine. And you get a guy that has huge playoff experience in Kevin Gausman. And that's why I'm excited about the Gausman trade. It'll also be fun to see him on my fantasy team in a Cubs uniform, because he's been chilling on the Kurtz Burns and Witt LLC is the fantasy team this year. Got a comment here from Sean. He says, could Kevin Alcantara get traded? Yes. I'll just say flat out, yes, he absolutely could get traded. And when could Gausman start for the Cubs? Well, the last time that Gausman started, ironically, it might have been you, Sean, that said this in the comments a little bit earlier. I'm taking a look here, trying to find that. No, I'm sorry. It was Curtis a little bit earlier. Kevin Gausman was actually in line to throw on Thursday against the Cubs. So it could be Thursday against the Blue Jays is when we see Gausman throw for the Cubbies. Again, selfishly, I would love to see him throw Wednesday. Simply for the fact I'll be at the game. But I think that's pretty what I would expect right now is we'll probably see Gausman throw on Thursday. And again, if he does throw against Jameson Taillon, that would be kind of cinema when it's all said and done. And this is interesting here. Sean says Padres rejected a trade of Will Warren for Adrian Morejon. I would also reject that as well. Morejon's nasty. Talk about, hey, if you can't get Mason Miller, that's a guy I'd love to see the Cubs go out and get. Morejon's, he's a monster, man. He is an absolute monster at the back end of that bullpen. A just underappreciated player, in my opinion, just because he plays on the same team as Mason Miller. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Jay asks here, Jose Soriano costs you how many pieces? Probably at least 3. And one of them is going to be a player that people probably don't want to part with. Whether that's a Rojas, an Owen Ayers. I know a lot of people love Owen Ayers, because he's a young catcher and, he could come up and essentially replace Carson Kelly, who's also has an option after this season to stick around. But I think it's going to cost you somebody in your top 4 plus, probably another top 10 prospect. And then maybe somebody in your top 20 is where I would tend to lean when it comes to a guy like Soriano. And again, and it's hard because you sit there and you're like, well, why are certain guys costing so much more and so much less? And it all comes down to team control. rentals are going to always cost you far less, far less than a guy with any kind of control is going to, of course. So I would say probably 3 pieces at least for Soriano. Now, granted, that's if it's just Soriano. If it's Soriano plus, let's say the Cubs get a reliever back or, some kind of filler back, then I think it jumps up to 4. Uh, 4 pieces is where I would ultimately say there. And again, I mean, you've got 2 more years of Soriano after this one if you go get him. That's why all those guys that, are under control naturally are going to cost you more. You're going to have them for multiple seasons. They're not just a 2-month rental. So I would say 3 if it's just Soriano, 4 if for some reason a reliever got added in there. And good friend of the show, Brandon asks, Ron, who is your circle of untouchables? Assuming we're talking strictly prospects and not anybody off the big league club. In my opinion, I don't think there is anybody that's untouchable. There's nobody in this system that I look at and I go, man, that guy's a can't miss player. We have to keep him. The Cubs only have two guys right now in the top 100, and that's Rojas and Hartshorn. Rojas plays a position that is kind of filled right now with the Cubs in shortstop or third base or second base. And then, I really like Hartshorn. I like the player. I still remember when the Cubs drafted him and writing up his blog and seeing the power numbers from high school. Them signing him away from Texas A&M is a big deal. A&M's a great baseball program. So anytime a guy's going there, he's a good player. And I think because of what he's done at such a young age, and he's been incredible. I mean, he's hitting like 300 right now in high A ball. I think I would say if anybody, I don't think anybody's untouchable, but Hartshorn's the one that I would sit there and be like, I'm mulling over a little bit more. You would really need somebody that's worth it, in my opinion, to move him. But I think that's it. I know a lot of people like Ayers, but I don't consider him untouchable. Rojas isn't untouchable. Wiggins certainly isn't untouchable. I think Hartshorn's the only one that would really make my stomach move a little bit. I think this Cubs farm right now is at a position where the guys that will rise to the top as the top prospects are either there already or are getting close. And the rest of the farm is a lot of unknowns. And for that reason, if you can capitalize on a guy's perspective value according to pipeline and all these rankings and things, I think you take advantage of it, especially if it's a piece that's going to help you win a World Series potentially. I think you have to, right? Like I know the Cubs were heartbroken to move Gleyber Torres all those years ago, but I think it worked out just fine. So we'll see. Jay says here, I want the Cubs to trade for a controllable pitcher tomorrow. Agree. I would love to see a controllable pitcher as long as it makes sense. Go get a guy that maybe doesn't fit the prototype, who's a little different than Kate Horton and a little different than Justin Steele and a little different than Ben Brown. That way you have that complement. If you're thinking in that sense, a lefty would be cool. Then you got 2 guaranteed lefties, 2 guaranteed righties in your rotation. If Ray is your 5, you're looking at, 3 righties then. It'll be interesting to see what happens here. Sean says, Hartshorn had to be taken out of the game for a reason, which means a huge trade involving him could be going down. I think he was taken out because the name has been kicked around. But again, we haven't heard anything yet. So I'll never say never. But again, if you're moving Hartshorn and you're the Cubs, you got to get something that's, again, controllable when it's all said and done. Oh yeah. This is a fun question. Brandon says injury is why Hartshorn might have been removed from the game. I haven't seen anything yet as to why Hartshorn came out of the game. I mean, we can certainly do the old Twitter search here. And see what's been said about him. like I said, I don't see anything. But again, who knows? Who knows the real reason why he was taken out? But I think this is a great question from Alap. He says, Ron, how much does a potential lockout next year affect the Cubs' aggressiveness and propensity to deal top prospects? Ooh, propensity. That's a good word. I'm going to use that in my Scrabble game. It's a great question. Because I think there's owners in baseball that genuinely believe there's going to be no baseball in 2027. I don't think that there's a season that's more than 100 games next year, frankly. And that's just how I've felt. I'm convinced there's going to be no baseball in 27. I've already genuinely convinced myself of that, which sucks because that's going to really set the sport back, in my opinion, for a few years. And they worked so hard to get it to the point where it is now, where I feel like baseball is actually starting to rebound and people getting excited again with, players like PCA and Shohei Ohtani and others kind of ruling the landscape right now. But I think it really does make it interesting when you think about it, in the sense of, who, because if there's no baseball, like that means your prospects aren't playing baseball next year either. It's like COVID again. It's another year of them not progressing and developing. And as a result, it would be not only heartbreaking, but I think if you're the Cubs, I think that's why you have to go for it in 26. Go get that arm. And if it's a guy that's under control through 28, great. If there's no baseball in 27, you still get him for another year. But I think the thing for me with the Cubs that I struggle with, and again, I'm not in the walls of the front office. I don't know the strategies that they're deploying. I don't know how they talk about certain players compared to others. I don't know what their 5-year plan compared to their 5-month or 5-week plan is. And the reason I say that is it's all speculation from our standpoint, right? Of how the Cubs operate to an extent. I know people are like, well, we know how they operate. A lot of you even followed up here, said, Jed's not very aggressive. We don't know the cross T's and the dotted I's of everything in the landscape of how they run a baseball team. And as a result, I struggle with this question and the Cubs' aggressiveness and things like that because, I want the Cubs to be aggressive. And every year that the Cubs aren't aggressive, to me, that's you're subtly waving the white flag of saying, I don't know if our team's good enough to truly go win it. Right? Theo Epstein moved, hell on earth effectively when he traded Gleyber Torres for Aroldis Chapman because the only glaring flaw on that team was the closing spot. And even then, Hector Rondon was good, but they wanted somebody that was great, who was elite, and they got it. And then they went and won the whole damn thing. It always makes me sit back and wonder, like, do they not think the team's good enough? Are you just playing the law of averages and assuming that, even though the Dodgers have won back-to-back World Series, that potentially there's a world where, something pays off in your favor and you beat them and then you're the champion? I don't know where they draw the line in terms of the aggressiveness. And I would love to know what that line looks like. I want to know, does Josiah Hartshorn really taint your view of this Cubs team in 4 years because you moved him for a guy who's only going to be with your team through 2028? I don't know. You have so many pieces already locked in right now that if I'm Jed Hoyer, you want to go win something, because if you just continue to be stagnant, at what point does Tom Ricketts say, hey, man, you don't have the same balls that Theo Epstein had. I thought you could be the guy to get it done, but you haven't gotten it done and you've left me hanging a few times, and we're going to go look in another direction. So it's a very long-winded way of saying I have no idea. I would like them to be more aggressive because it's, hey, go win it now, and then you can rest next year when there's no baseball, knowing that you're the last team to win the damn thing. But in the same breath, I know the Cubs operate in a way where they value how does this affect the future of the team? And Sometimes I wonder if they overvalue prospects. Like this was a conversation I had with Mark Yano, who was in our comment section here tonight, good friend of mine. We were kind of trading back and forth, and I said, I've always wondered where the Cubs are as like in the sense of just I think sometimes they do overvalue their own talent. And now granted, I think a lot of teams are guilty of that. But there has to be a point where you know when to let go with the value and take the swing at something that is more of a guarantee than, some kid that is playing baseball in Myrtle Beach or, Des Moines, Iowa or Knoxville, Tennessee or Myrtle Beach. I said Myrtle Beach twice, South Bend, pardon me. And go take the swing on the guy that's getting paid millions of dollars because he plays at the highest level in the world. I don't know. It's a loaded question. It's a great question, Lap. But I really don't know where they go in the sense of that aggression. Then we'll go from there. And yeah, Brandon's saying here it could be injury for Hartshorn. And yeah, definitely a possibility. So again, I don't know if Hartshorn's getting traded. I really don't think he is, frankly, just because of the whole crazy discussion we just had. Is I think the Cubs look at him and they say he's the one guy. I forget who it was that said this. It might have been Just Baseball. Love Just Baseball. Friends of the show. Jack McMullen's a good friend of ours. And Josiah Hartshorn is probably the one guy in this farm right now that I think you can project out as a 130 WRC plus hitter as a big leaguer because of the power and what he brings. I don't know if anybody else in this farm can really do that for you. Like, I don't know if even Rojas does that. I don't even know if, some of your other high contact bats do it. The Cubs system's not as deep as it once was. Like, this isn't 2014 and 2013 when you had, Chris Bryant and Addison Russell and Javier Baez, who were all top prospects in baseball. I mean, Josiah Hartshorn is their highest rated prospect, and he's still like 60th in all of baseball. They don't have anybody in the top 20 right now. And I think as a result of that, if you have one chip that actually looks like it could work out and benefit your club in the near future too, because he's also super young and he's ascended at a pace that most 19-year-olds simply just don't do. I really don't think they move him. I don't. And especially if it's injury related, because then teams are going to be like, well, I mean, if they like him, they'll still take him. But, it might have just been precautionary too. I mean, they don't want these kids getting super hurt. And then you not only lose a player in your own farm that can help you, and, you also lose some of that value in a prospective trade. So I love the Kevin Gausman deal. The Cubs got a Kevin, which we absolutely love to see. And I expect them to be busy between now and the deadline on Monday. And assuming all goes well, I'm hoping and hopefully I'll be joined by some of my Cubs on Tap co-hosts, but to do a little bit of a trade deadline check-in, be completely just a trade deadline centric show before the Dodgers game on Monday night. And hopefully this club looks a lot different and in a good way, just because they continue to add talent and truly try to make a playoff push here, because I think the Cubs are one of the few teams in the AL, or pardon me, in the NL, Jesus, who, will actually be able to contend with the Dodgers potentially. I genuinely feel that way right now. Jay asks here live tomorrow after the deadline passes. It probably won't be right after the deadline passes, considering the deadline is at 5:00, I think, Central Time, or might even be 4:00 Central Time, 5:00 Eastern. I have to double check that because I don't know it off the top of my head. But it'll be some point in the evening, and hopefully before the Cubs start at 7:05 tomorrow. So, but yeah, that'll be probably the range for that show. So, but let's talk really quick about this upcoming Dodger series. We know Tarek Skubal is going to throw on Tuesday. That was already announced. I don't know if I know they've announced the starters. or they said that they have them, but I haven't seen them yet. So we're going to take a look together because right now it's supposed to be Matthew Boyd throwing on Monday. It's TBD as of now for the Dodgers. As we've already learned, it'll be Skubal against Assad, at least as of now, on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, it's projected to be Shota Imanaga against a TBD for the Dodgers. And then again, that Toronto game, it says TBD, but Kevin Gausman was in line to throw against the Cubs in that game on Thursday. So he may be throwing for the Cubs and making his debut on Thursday, which would be pretty cool against his former team at Wrigley Field. I mean, what a debut that would be. And it'd be even funnier if Curtis's projection and epiphany comes true and it's Jameson Taillon throwing for the Blue Jays. 5 p.m. Central for the deadline tomorrow. Beautiful. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate you dropping that in there. So, yeah. So, I would say for the show tomorrow, probably somewhere between 5:30 and probably like 6:30 is my guess. And it'll probably be a quick one. It might even be during the Cubs game. It might be like almost a little bit of a live watch along type thing. Just to talk about the trade activity from the day. So maybe even be closer to 7. I'll encourage anybody that's tuned in here, which first off, you guys have been fucking incredible. Shout out to all of you guys jumping in the comments and being a part of the show. It makes my job a lot easier as a solo to utilize you guys as a part of the conversation. So a big shout out to the comment section. According to my statistics, says we had over 200 people in here tonight at points. So super cool. Obviously, this is an exciting time of the season with the deadline approaching. And it'll be awesome to see. So people absolutely will hear from us on Monday. And then, of course, probably, hopefully, back to our scheduled Thursday show as well after that Toronto game. That'll be, super cool. If not, we'll for sure be back with everybody a week from today to recap all the action. Dodgers coming to town for 3, starting on Monday night. Day game on Wednesday. Cubs have another day game on Thursday as a part of that makeup against the Blue Jays. And then they are off to Kansas City to play the Royals for 3 games. Need to get a series win there. It's going to be a tough Dodgers series. You had just a tough series against the Yankees come through. And certainly got to take advantage of that Toronto game as well and try to be able to win. I would say, you look at it, they got 7 games in the next 7 days. I think you at least got to win. In my opinion, a perfect case scenario is 5-2, but at least 4-3. Come out on the other side of 500 and maybe get a series win or 2 series wins in there. I think would certainly be nice, as well as a win over the Blue Jays. So, but of course, if you're too impatient to catch any of that, you can always head over to ontapsportsnet.com and check out what we got going on over there. Head over to the On Tap Sportsnet on YouTube. Subscribe, hit that bell button. You'll know when all of our great shows go live, including us here at Cubs on Tap and, of course, 4 Feathers, Bears on Tap. Hey, it's Bears training camp, everybody. Football's almost back. And, of course, if you have friends that like the Southsiders, so do we. Sox on Tap live. And the Bulls on Tap guys have been absolutely crushing it. Check out their show as well. And again, all of that over at the On Tap Sportsnet YouTube page. Follow along at On Tap Sportsnet on socials, at Cubbies on Tap. You can follow me at Loose on Tap. Follow all the boys as well if you don't already. It's going to be a fun next 20 hours or so. And I fully look forward to seeing what the Cubs do because I think they're going to continue to add. It's not just Kevin Gausman. The Cubs got a Kevin, but I don't think they're done just yet. With the Dodgers coming to town this week and the Blue Jays for a lone game before heading off to Kansas City for the weekend. I appreciate the hell out of every single one of you. Thank you so much for joining us on TapSportsNet.com and at On Tap Sportsnet on the socials, and you can check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Jay says it best. Fuck the Dodgers. Always fuck the Cardinals. We'll throw in a little sprinkle of fuck the Brewers. And eloquently, I bid you good night, and let's go Cubbies.